Good afternoon, everyone. Or evening, wherever it may be. Actually, happy pause to y'all. How's everyone doing today? Today, on this installment of Carpo's Evening, I'm going to talk about, well, I really don't want to talk about it because it always draws a lot of attention or controversy. But alternative media, or media in general. I was having a discussion earlier on Facebook. Somebody had posted a picture of Alex Jones in a hot tub, and it was a meme or something rather that made a comment pertaining to fear-mongering or whatnot. I can't even remember what it was, but it was poking a little fun at him. Well, a few comments down, somebody had responded. A girl who basically said that at least he's telling the truth. He's trying to wake people up. And so we got into this long discussion. To make a long story short, in the end, I said, it's good that Alex Jones woke you up. However, it's time to move on to the real teachers and leave the garbage propaganda behind. Now, some of you may know who Alex Jones is. Some of you may not. Those who do will either know that he's a complete douchebag, or you will still believe his nonsense. Now, to defend the man, many of the things he says are true. It's a corrupt system. You could sit and listen to an hour of his rants about totally legitimate things that are happening. The problem is that they're interlaced by anti-Zionist propaganda. All he talks about is the Jews and these major conspiracies that he cannot prove or disprove. But here's the main problem. Many of these issues may be true. The one thing about Alex Jones that gives him away is the fact that not just that he's a media whore in the sense that he's selling survival kits on his website. He has a vested interest to make people paranoid about end times, and he's cashing in on that fear of end times by selling survival kits. Now, this to me shows a clash of interest. Should definitely not be doing that. But to keep it simple, he rants and raves like a lunatic to get attention and sensationalize everything, and says a few half-truths with a lot of bullshit in it. And people eat it up. He does things basically just like Trump does, in my opinion. He does a lot of things just to get the camera on him and get the attention to try to get that. Now, I'm not going to get into the details, the personal details. I can tell you about how his Jewish wife left him and has tried to take his 3 kids, and he ended up having to give her one of the $1 million homes. The guy's not poor. They have a lot of money, in other words. He's done well for himself on this nonsense. And you'd think with a little bit of money like that, that he would, I guess, give a little back. But I won't get into, the morals of it or whatnot. But to make my point, he spreads a lot of fear, yet has no reproach or answer to these problems. In other words, he goes out and screams the sky is falling, but he doesn't tell you how to build a shelter. He has no clue of telling people how to get over these things, or to try to get around them, or to try to fight back. You will never see Alex Jones passing around a petition to try to curb some fear, that he may have. It's a matter of looking at things that are too complicated and big for anybody to really say yes or no about. And I've spent too long talking about Alex Jones, so I'll move on, but I wanted to use him as the example for a lot of fearmongers out there who just want to tell you anything they can to get you worked up, to try to make you say, what's going on around here, And I don't blame people, for being scared, because the world's a scary place. But when you're listening to people who are reporting the same thing that everybody else is reporting, yet doing it from their basements by compiling the same crap research that they hear online, you start to realize that very few people are actually journalists anymore. Very few people have actually, that you hear on the internet, You can hear 1,000 people on YouTube telling you what's going on in the Middle East. Some believe it's all faked. I've heard people even say that there is no war in the Middle East. I've even heard people say there is no Middle East. But people have become so delusional because they've never been there and they don't really understand. And even if you go there, the Middle East is just a term. It means nothing. There are several countries over there. So the people are really unaware, basically, of the bigger picture, so it makes it difficult to have a proper assessment of what's going on. I guess, in the world. But this leads to a lot of speculation and a lot of fear-mongering about basically everything you can imagine. So I'm going to break it down without getting too deep into this, because I don't want to have anybody butthurt because they consider themselves a truther. But anybody that I've found who calls themselves a truther is usually the last person I would want to listen to for any type of truth, because they're seldom willing to discuss anything because they are always having the truth. And they will tell you things like, I am trying to tell you the truth. And you say, have you been there? Did you go to this location? Did you even go to this shooting to see if these people were real, or are you just reporting from the television that you claim is bullshit? See, a lot of these guys are talking about how the media is lying and they're full of shit, and then they go on quoting media sources for their evidence by saying, oh, look at this news clip. It's like if maybe the media is using bullshit clips to fill in for stuff. So you're negating your whole opinion by being a truther and using the same media that you claim is bunk. So if you're a person out there who's trying to get the truth, listening to individuals is fine, but listen to many individuals with many different opinions to get a rounded idea of what's really going on out there, because you're still not going to know. So don't go around pretending like, it's the truth. I used to listen to, say, Vice News. I believe Bill Maher bought Vice, and Bill Maher is not owned, but he's chumping out anyway. He's, because it's on HBO. There's no commercials, no ads, no corporate interest, and he can basically say what he wants. When he took over Vice was reporting all kinds of great things around the world, but now they're talking about, like, guys in Germany that, have their genitals removed and weird shit like this that I think, it's just not that important, but whatever. So anyway, the point is that a lot of these news sources have to put out crazy news to keep up, because the reality is that the world is not that exciting for news. I hate to break it to you, but, this is why people are making up so much stuff. This is why you watch the news and it's all negative about what's going on, and they get you afraid of the robber that robbed somebody a week ago in another state over, or, the serial killer from 20 years ago who may have reappeared. The fear-mongering, it's not just fear-mongering to keep people scared. It's because people want that excitement. And the bare bones truth is that besides the wars that are going on, there's not a lot going on. I'll be in just a minute. There's not a lot going on in the world. There's not as much as we would like to think that really is going on. But at the same time, everything is going on. Every individual. But I'm saying out of 7 billion people, the conflicts to talk about and the amount of information you can really put out about these things is minimal compared to the demand people have for daily exciting news. So people make shit up. So in finale, what do we really do with this news? What do we do with this information? Where do we get our news, and who do we go to find out what's going on? Well, ask yourself if what you want to learn is really important. Ask if it's something that is going to benefit you to know. So if you want to know whether or not a certain conspiracy is true, ask yourself if it was something that was, say, 100 years ago that nobody will ever know one way or another. Does it really matter? Or are you going to spend months doing research on something that is irrelevant? Because, we already know that many conspiracies are true, that the government consists of many different organizations, many of which have slid themselves in to lie to us, and basically are like the bad apple in the bunch that make everybody say the government does this, the government does that. And then we have these guys like Alex Jones and other people saying, it's the government, it's these governments. But, knock it off, please. It's not the governments. Many of the governing people are just people trying to make a difference. Not everyone is out to make a buck. And not everybody is part of a giant conspiracy. But it's much easier to believe that for one main reason. Because believing that this ship is out of control is too far for some people. They can't handle it. They would rather believe that a shadow organization actually is in control of everything in this world. And that means that people believe that every single media outlet is completely owned to the point where they can't say anything, as if there's a list of things that they have to say and can't say. Now, this is a fact. Many of these media outlets, the larger outlets, do have lists of things they can't talk about. So that's not a joke. That's not a conspiracy. It's true. They're not allowed to talk bad about certain things, especially if it's an interest of, let's say, Rupert Murdoch, or one of these, let's say a billionaire that owns a network, and they have an interest in a company, and they want to run a news article talking bad about that company. Of course they're not going to let them. So, there's a clash of interest. So, in solution, in end, I believe that not only should banks be broken up for the obvious reasons, but you can't really force them to, but media cannot be forced to break up. It's impossible. In other words, just because these media conglomerates keep forming doesn't mean you can force them by law to break up. That just goes against the principle of freedom. And even if they do, who's going to buy them? And if people do buy them, they'll just be bought back out by the same people. The solution is in the root of the problem, which is figuring out why people are lying to us. And that's to keep us in the dark about basic things. And who wants to do this? A small group of very, very wealthy individuals who want to keep things as they've always been. So they spread disinformation not just through the news, but through other campaigns of so-called truthers. And then we have disinformation within the truther campaign. Then we have channels where people are being accused of being shills merely because they don't have the same opinion as others. And it's become a clusterfuck trying to figure out what's true anymore. And so my only advice is to back away from it all and start over. Ask yourself what's really important to you. Because I can only give my advice, which is to ditch most of it. That most of what goes on outside the borders, if it's not something you can directly deal with or affect, then back away from it until it crosses your path again. You gain knowledge, you put it on the shelf, and you use it if you can. But worrying about it, talking about it over and over, like things like people like Alex Jones do, the Zionist agenda, get over it, buddy. It's time to move past it and say, what are you going to do about this agenda? And so that's my word of it. That's my thought on truthers for the week. Talk to y'all.